So today we're talking about the inflammation evaluation. That is just my fun term for how we can evaluate our own inflammatory status so that you can decide what to do moving forward, because there are a plethora of anti-inflammatory strategies. There's no one size fits all. There is no one better thing to do to improve your inflammation, and everyone's different as far as why they might have some chronic inflammation going on. So let's start with why I'm interested in this, because a lot of people ask me, like, why did you become a dietitian? Why do you work at the wellness center? And I want to introduce my sister, whose name is Kelsey, and she has type 1 diabetes, which no one had ever heard of in my family. It does not run in our family. And she was diagnosed as a late onset, so in her late teens. And when she became diabetic, suddenly she's on medication to, make her live and survive. She's on insulin and on a pump, and boom, she gained a ton of weight. Boom, she has all this skin stuff going on her arms, lots of reactions. She's got foggy mind. She's like 17 when she got diagnosed, and she's having trouble keeping up with her homework and remembering her appointments. And she's feeling kind of isolated and lonely and down. Like all this stuff seemed to happen within a month of her diagnosis and of figuring out her medication, which always seemed to me like, wait, what? Her medication made things worse in some ways. And then along came lifestyle. And she started looking into what she could do for herself. She started just kind of walking. And then she started really digging into the food and not just eating for her insulin numbers, not just eating for her carb counts, but eating for reducing inflammation. And we started investigating that together. And I thought that was really interesting. And then she started really looking at her exercise, and she started adding resistance training. And then she really started looking into her sleep. And fast forward, she's now 35 years old. So this has been quite a journey. All those other things have changed. She has lost a ton of weight. She no longer deals with skin tags on her arms. And when she does, she knows it's because she's stressed or she hasn't been eating well. She has a phenomenal career and juggles a lot of things and doesn't deal with foggy mind any more than the rest of us do who are busy. And I just always found it so fascinating that she could achieve this with medication, hand in hand with lifestyle, and feel better. So I just kind of like that as a motivating story of you there's lots of different avenues that you can go down. And even if you have a chronic condition like diabetes, like heart disease, like a thyroid condition, there's so many things you can still do to make yourself feel better and to target the inflammatory process underneath. So that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to define inflammation and kind of go through some misconceptions around inflammation. And then I will talk about how you can evaluate your own inflammatory status and give you some strategies to move forward. And then I will talk about what the masterclass series is at the very end. So misconception number one is that inflammation is always a bad thing. Anti-inflammatory diet, chronic inflammation, these have become very trendy terms in the media. I don't think I can look at the news feed on my phone one day without seeing something about inflammation or anti-inflammatory. And it's just this bad guy. But let's think through what inflammation actually is. And I have this picture because imagine you got a paper cut. Okay, we've all had a paper cut. They're the worst. But what happens when you get that paper cut? First, it might bleed, right? Usually. And then once it's done bleeding, it sort of becomes red and almost inflamed a little bit around that area. And it's like that. And it stings and it's red and it's sore. And heaven help you if you get lemon or lime juice in that cut for about 24 to 48 hours. And then it starts to scab over and it gets a little bit redder as it does that. And suddenly it's healed. That was inflammation at work. That was your inflammatory process saying, whoops, we had some damage. We had something bad happen, and we are going to come to the surface. We're actually going to make it a little bit worse before it gets better, and then it's going to be better. That's what's supposed to happen. That's our immune system at work, is inflammation coming to the site of injury, making things a little bit worse so that it can make it better. But now, picture right as that paper cut is about to heal, you got another paper cut in almost the exact same place. Probably gives some of us the chills to even think of that. Then what happens? Go through the process again. It gets red, it scabs, it heals. We paper cut it again in almost the same exact place. And we do that over and over and over again before it heals. What's eventually going to happen to that spot? It will probably be chronically inflamed. It will forever be kind of red and maybe bumpy, right there, right? It will be always a reminder that, I never let that heal. That is a very rudimentary analogy for what chronic inflammation is in your body. If we are constantly stressed, if we are forever inhaling toxins, if we are eating inflammatory foods, if we are not letting ourselves detox by sweating and moving, we will kind of consistently be giving ourselves those paper cuts in various areas of our body and not let those areas heal. And so then we get chronic inflammation everywhere. And when we're talking about the gut, which is one of the primary spots for chronic inflammation, simply because it's exposed to everything from air to food and all that, then we have problems with absorbing nutrients. Now we don't have enough nutrition in our system, and now our immune system isn't working great. Or if there's inflammation in the gut that doesn't go away, we might actually have gut symptoms. We feel bloated, we feel icky, we are gassy perhaps, but you might not always feel those symptoms. Sometimes it takes a long time and it's more of the blocking of absorption that's happening, and that trickles down to problems in other areas of the body. So usually chronic inflammation starts to rear its head years after it's been going on. And it'll start with little things. It'll start with, I'm suddenly gaining a little bit of weight, or suddenly I'm starting to have headaches a lot, or I'm having trouble sleeping. And then they start building until for some people, sometimes it actually triggers something like an immune condition, like a thyroid condition that there's no takebacks from. So what we want to do is be very proactive with inflammation and with an anti-inflammatory lifestyle so that we can let our body use inflammation intelligently when we have actual problems and actual exacerbations and actual introductions of toxins and pathogens, and not just because we aren't letting ourselves heal. So I hope that sort of makes sense. So yes, inflammation is beneficial acutely, but not chronically. When you're chronically inflamed, we have these issues come up. It is actually one of the top leading causes of death, inflammatory conditions. Up to 60% of adults have chronic inflammation and may not even know it because we have just normalized things like being always stressed and always sleepy, saying things like, oh, I'm so busy. I have so much on my plate. I only slept a couple hours last night. It's just normal. People just accept it. No one questions it. And therefore, we're not noticing the symptoms. We're just thinking, oh, that's normal, or this is normal aging. The global cost of inflammatory conditions, and that really is an umbrella term, is projected to exceed $47 trillion by 2030. And that's right around the corner. So what happens from acute to chronic? When we have acute inflammation, that's what I meant by a paper cut, a burn, a trauma, an infection. We got the flu. Our body had to do its inflammatory process and recover from the flu. But ideally, we recover from that. But if we don't, and again, we're having those inflammatory substances in our system, we get things like cardiovascular disease, neurological diseases, so diseases of the brain, autoimmune diseases like diabetes or thyroid, rheumatoid arthritis, which is another autoimmune disease. Cancer can be triggered by chronic inflammation that's completely uncontrolled. Lupus, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome. So typically these things, they have some genetic component to them that is turned on by the chronic inflammation never going away. That's why you're like, well, these two people had the exact same inflammatory lifestyle. They grew up in the same house. They both smoked. They both ate junk food their whole lives. They were both sedentary. One got cancer and the other got heart disease, or one got heart disease and the other got nothing. It's because there's other factors involved, but you don't know what your genetics look like, and you don't know what things you can't control. And so that's why I want to just really promote being proactive and being as anti-inflammatory as we can, so we don't turn on the things that trigger chronic diseases. Misconception number 2 is that diet alone can eliminate chronic inflammation. So, I'm a dietitian. I always am food first, and I always promote the healthy eating, but you can't just eat healthy. If you are not looking at your sleep, if you are not looking at stress, if you're not looking at movement, that's only a piece of the puzzle. So I will say that if you are like, wow, I have to work on all of it, then food would be a great place to start, because it really can be super impactful for reducing inflammatory load. And some research actually shows that just changing diet can be 70 to 80% more effective than other interventions by themselves but synergistically combined, they're even more impactful. And it will depend on what your risk factors are too, and where you're starting. If you already eat pretty healthy, but you're sedentary, I would say let's start with the activity first. But if all we're eating is super, super processed foods, we want to look at food. And actually, USDA released new recommendations and guidelines yesterday. So I'll have to come up with a PowerPoint for that also. So let's look at food and movement. And I like this little diagram because it shows you the benefits of going toward a more whole food, less processed diet on the left, the benefits of going toward more movement, more exercise on the right, and then that synergistic, what if we do both? So if we're improving our nutrition, we're taking away very, very ultra processed foods. We start to have a better digestive system, which equals better gut symptoms, better gut feelings, better blood sugar and insulin levels, which means we have less risk of diabetes and metabolic diseases. We can use our fat as fuel. When we eat healthfully, we can use sugar or fat as our energy substance, which means we're metabolically flexible, which is a really good thing. If all we ever eat is very processed foods, lots of starchy carbohydrates, we can only use sugar as fuel, and then fat just gets stored. So that's where things like weight loss resistance can come into play. If we start eating well, we have less cravings, we have a better appetite, we have better skin, hair, nails. It is protective of every chronic disease, and it helps even with joint pain. If we start moving, and I literally mean just move, forget the different modalities of exercise, start moving your body. We sleep better because we have a better circadian rhythm and we start actually exercising all of the different tissues and cells, and then they want to sleep. We have an improved metabolism. We gain strength and endurance, which means we can be more independent and have a happier day. We have better bone density and therefore less risk of osteopenia and osteoporosis, less risk of joint issues, regulated hormones and improvement of hormone disorders, better cardiovascular health, and better neurological health. And then you put these two things together, if we start improving our nutrition and improving our exercise, which reduces our inflammatory load, simply by two things we're completely in control over, not even looking at medication or supplements or anything, we have better mood, we have less fat storage, better weight, better blood pressure, better cholesterol, less inflammation overall, less risk of all of those different conditions we looked at on the last couple of slides, and better energy and resilience. So these are two areas that are very much within our life control that can significantly minimize systemic inflammation in the body. But food and exercise are not it. We also have stressors. We have to think about what's going on in the mind, because if you are sitting there eating this super healthy dish of tons of vegetables and fiber and beans and protein, and you are eating that in front of a TV that is showing you all the things going wrong in the world, you are stressed so much that your stress response, your fight or flight, comes into play. And let's look at what happens. When we are in fight or flight, our breathing rate goes up, our blood pressure goes up, our heart rate goes up, our blood sugar and insulin and adrenaline go up, oxidation, which is yet another word for inflammation, and our aging process. All of those things happen. What goes down when we are in fight or flight? Our thought processes. We don't think as clearly. Creativity, concentration, immune and digestive system. So if you think of, if you just had to run away from the tiger, the age-old analogy, does your body care that you just ate a meal and needs to digest it? No, your body needs to produce enough adrenaline and blood sugar to get away from that tiger. So if we're always in fight or flight mode, our digestive processes get minimized completely. So do our immune processes, just the bare basics are done. So even if we're eating healthfully, we're not utilizing those nutrients the way that we should. Kind of like I talked about in the beginning, we're not absorbing them to be able to use them well. We end up having digestive issues. We kind of have a lot of bowel movements or a lot of cramping, and we store a lot of things as fat because they weren't properly broken down because our digestive system wasn't working optimally. And then we have a lot of cravings and we eat more than we should because our concentration and our thought processes aren't working great. And we have this really high insulin levels. So what we want to do is when we're eating, when we're doing anything, is try and get into more of the relaxed response. Our fight or flight should be used for that purpose. When you are exercising, that's when we want fight or flight to go, yeah, like let's get pumped. when we are getting ready to do something exciting, when we're getting ready to give a speech, when we're going to go meet our best friend we haven't seen in a while. Anything that we want to get pumped up for is when we want fight or flight. But when it's something that should be done sitting or in stillness, where we want all of those processes at the bottom to be functioning at the highest end, we want to be in rest or digest relaxation mode. And there was a really cool study that showed the impact of this. They had two groups of people that ate the same exact meal, and they put little nodes all over their faces so they could measure their smile versus frown. And they had one group watch a comedy and another group watch a tragedy. And the people who watched the comedy had significantly better absorption and use of the food that they ate versus the people who watched the tragedy, simply because of the neurological response of being sad and upset versus happy and content. So I really like this phrase, when walking, walk, when eating, eat. Pay attention to what you're doing, and that will always help you for rest and digest, because we want the anti-inflammatory processes of relaxation. Misconception number 3 is that anti-inflammatory strategies are not needed if there are no symptoms. And this is my favorite quote of all time: the absence of disease does not guarantee the presence of health. So I kind of cued you into this at the very beginning, but just because you don't have a diagnosis, just because you don't necessarily feel like you have inflammation, does not mean there's not underlying inflammation going on, because health lies on a spectrum. We go from disease to optimal health every day, every minute, depending on what's going on. We will be exposed to toxins and stressors and pathogens. That is life. You can't get rid of all of it. So we'll always kind of be on this spectrum. And what we want to do is everything within our power to get us toward the right, so that we're prepared when a major pathogen does hit us. When the flu hits, if we've been as healthy as we can be for ourselves, we're going to fight that flu a lot better than someone who hasn't been. Because again, we're on that spectrum. So I guess what I would say is assume you have inflammation. Assume you have an underlying inflammatory process always going on because of the life that we live in, because of cars and telephones and technology, all the things. And so do what you can to minimize that. And this is where I love Stephen Covey. If you've not heard of him, highly recommend reading his works. But he has come up with the circle of influence and control. So when you're thinking of what you want to change in the inflammatory structure, and we're going to go over some strategies here in a minute, there's kind of these 3 different areas. There's things I can control today, things I can influence, like maybe I can cast my vote, I can buy certain things. So here's an example of 2 of those things. Things I can control: what I buy and put in my mouth. Things I can influence by purchasing pasture-raised eggs as opposed to regular eggs. I'm voting with my dollar. And it might not mean that my store is going to give me super cheap pasture-raised eggs, but if everyone starts buying those, they're going to see demand, and I'm influencing that overall process. Okay, so you have influence versus actual control. And then things that are totally outside of my control, or things that are in the realm of possibility, are things we need to let go, because I see a lot of people get hung up on what's available in my grocery store, or things with exercise, like I can't stand up without a walker. Okay, well, that doesn't mean we can't exercise. There's always modifications. We can get in the pool. We can get on adaptive equipment. I have too many things at my home that I'm in control over. I can't get out of the house. Okay, well, we've got apps where we can exercise for that. And we have food delivery programs. So there are things that are outside of our control that we need to let go of. And then some that we can decide, well, what can I control within that barrier, if that makes sense. And the way I bring this up, the reason I bring this up, I know this isn't necessarily anti-inflammatory, is because when I come up with anti-inflammatory strategies for people and we talk through them, immediately there's a lot of I can't do that, or that's too new for me, or I've never done that before. And I just kind of want to change the mindset around that, of just think of what's really important to you and what can you control and work toward that, because things tend to snowball. There's a lot of research around habit building that is all about starting with literally the smallest first step you can possibly choose and working toward that kind of snowballing into a bigger impact. So this is what I've come up with that I call the inflammation evaluation. And if anybody remembers like the Teen Bop magazines and the quizzes that you could take and then you add up your scores, that's literally what this is. And so they're put into 5 different categories of nutrition, movement, sleep, stress, mental health, and environmental factors. This is kind of what most of the research looks at as far as the sources of inflammation for a person. There's nutrition sources, there's movement sources, sleep sources, stress and mental health sources, and environmental. So as you go through the evaluation, you circle all the questions and you add up your points and kind of decide where you are in that spectrum of health and inflammation. So this is something we actually spend quite a bit of time on in the masterclass. If you are registered for this webinar, I will still send this out to you so you can do it on your own. But let's go through some of those. So for nutrition, what are the questions being asked? How often do you eat ultra processed foods or fast foods? So let's take a step on that. What is an ultra processed food? Because this actually came up in the new USDA guidelines yesterday to minimize ultra processed foods. Ultra processed means it in no way shows up as the original food itself, and the ingredient list is almost incomprehensible. So canned beans are processed, right? Someone has pre-cooked those for you. You didn't need to cook the raw beans. So I would call that a processed food. Are they ultra processed? No, those are, I can still see that they are beans. If I look at the ingredients, it's usually beans and water or beans, water, and salt. If it's beans, water, salt, maltodextrin, and a list of other flavorings and colors, then that is an ultra processed bean product. But there's this spectrum of partially processed for you, which is more like a convenience food, and ultra processed. And I really want you to start just paying attention to what you are eating, how much of it is ultra processed, because the danger here is that when it in no way looks like, feels like, sounds like a real food, your body doesn't recognize it either. We don't have the enzymes and the digestive process to break down all of these synthetic ingredients in these combinations that have never been seen before. So we end up not absorbing very much nutrition. We have a weaker immune system for it, and we have more inflammation. Question 2 is, how many servings of fruits and vegetables do you eat every day? And you would really think through this. Be honest with yourself. Why is this such a critical question? It's because of 2 reasons. One is fiber. Fiber is number 1 on the grand scheme of anti-inflammatory things that we can do. Fiber does so much for our bodies in the digestive world, cholesterol, fullness, blood sugar. It does so much. The recommendations are 40 grams per day. The minimum is 25. I like people to get to 40 because that's what traditional cultures eat. But the US says a minimum of 25 grams per day. How much does the average American eat? 12 to 14 grams per day. We're not even half of where we should be on the minimum intake of fiber, and it's very critical for our inflammatory status that we get more. The other thing with fruits and vegetables is the bright colors you see in the produce section, those are antioxidants. Every single color in those pieces of produce, those natural colors, are different types of antioxidants and polyphenols that help fight inflammation. Okay, so you prevent inflammation with the fiber, you fight inflammation with the antioxidants and the polyphenols, which is why we need more fruits and vegetables. And I just want you to take a second, think through your day yesterday. Did you eat 5 half-cup servings of fruits and vegetables? And you don't have to shout it out or anything, but just be honest with yourself. And is that normal? We really want to get to 5 servings or more. How often do you eat anti-inflammatory foods? Anti-inflammatory means not processed. Fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, legumes, meat, eggs, dairy, all great. How often do you eat them? You'd be surprised how many people say rarely, because we're mostly eating fast foods or we're mostly eating these like really ultra processed packaged foods. How much water do you drink daily? Why is this important? Because water helps flush the system. Water helps make sure that we can detox. And everyone thinks, oh, detox is a crazy phrase. We do have a detoxification process in our body. That's what sweat and pee and poop is. So we want to make sure that we're drinking enough water to help those processes get icky stuff out of the body. All right, so that's category number 1. Category number 2 is our movement. Okay, so if we're not moving, we're also not going to be sweating much. We're not going to be building muscle. We're not going to be activating any of our tissues, which all are part of inflammation. A lot of people don't realize just how much muscle is part of our anti-inflammatory process, because muscle is an immune organ. It actually produces anti-inflammatory immune substances. So we want to be working those. So the questions here are, how often do you engage in moderate physical activity? Walking, yoga, swimming, anything that kind of brings your heart rate up, but you're not having trouble talking as you're doing it. That's high intensity. So moderate physical activity, how often do you do it? Even if it's in 15-minute chunks. Do you get 30 minutes a day total? That would be the recommendation. That is what our bodies need to maintain healthy movement, to maintain healthy anti-inflammatory systems via movement. And on the flip side, how many hours do you spend sitting every single day? We know that sitting is now called the new smoking. Most people are very sedentary, and we even have like our gym rats who will go to the gym for an hour every morning and pump it hard and get on the treadmill, and then they sit all day long. And they don't get up again until they go home for dinner, and then they eat and they sit in front of the TV, and then they hit the gym again in the morning for an hour. I would rather you skip the gym and move every 30 minutes throughout your day. Not to say the gym isn't great. I do want you doing that. But sitting and being sedentary, guess what? That doesn't allow anything to do. It doesn't allow your bloodstream to be really pumping. So it doesn't activate your heart very well. And it doesn't let your lymph move. And lymph is our immune system, our immune pathway in our body. And lymph must be moved mechanically, which means we have to actually move our body to get it moving. How often do you engage in strengthening and muscle building exercises? And again, I was talking about how important muscle is for the immune system to function. We want at least 2 days per week of resistance training to build muscle. So I know that, a lot of people I know, my mom included, they walk every day. That's not quite enough. We have to do something that's stressing the muscles more as well to really, really focus in on exercise. Sleep. We talked about how important already that sleep and stress resilience is, because if we have chronic elevated stress, we have chronic elevated cortisol, we have chronic elevated inflammation. So we have to sleep to let ourselves detox. We ideally need 7 to 9 hours every single night as adults. And just, do you wake up feeling rested? And obviously most of us wake up right away and we're like, oh, I want to go to bed. But I mean, like within that first hour of waking up, do you feel pretty much ready for the day overall? That's a good indicator of how well you slept. Stress and mental health. So aside from sleep, I kind of always put sleep in a separate category because it's its own thing when it comes to stress resilience. And it is super important for the immune function aside from stress. So stress in its own category, how often do you feel overwhelmed or excessively stressed? This is normal. Everyone will feel this sometimes, but are you feeling this every day throughout the day? We need to work on this. How often do you practice stress reduction techniques, meditation, deep breathing, just mindfulness? It doesn't have to be sitting and meditating for 15 to 20 minutes at a time. There's actually been a lot of amazing research about the huge impact of bringing cortisol down by simply taking a deep breath in transitioning to something new. So I'm sitting here talking to you. I'm going to go to a meeting right after this. I'm going to take a deep 4 count in, hold, 4 count out breath as I move to my next space. What that does is it resets my nervous system. It tells my nervous system, you have finished this. You're okay. You're not all heightened from teaching. You can move on to the next thing and your brain can switch. Now, I find even more benefit from 3 or 4 deep breaths, but sometimes that's all you need. You don't need to have full weekend retreats, although those are phenomenal. You really can just practice very small stress reduction techniques sprinkled throughout your day to still get the immune benefit and the anti-inflammatory benefit. And then finally, our environmental factors. This one's the trickier one, I would argue, in that circle of influence. A lot of environmental factors you can't control. We can't control the fact that there are cars all over Brea, and we do have toxins from those. Depending on your grocery store, you might not have a ton of access to non-organic or to organic produce. So again, this is the one I really encourage you to look at what you can control so you don't start to get overwhelmed, because you could go down a rabbit hole of environmental toxins and just feel, I'm so exposed. So here are 2 things I feel like most people can control. One is your time outdoors in natural light. What? Exposure? Huh? What does this mean? It means one, you're getting outside, breathing natural air and not just sucking up synthetic light and air in your house. So that will do wonders. But also, by exposing ourselves to natural light, it helps our circadian rhythm set up normally. There's so much research around this of people who see natural light with their bare eyes in the morning, midday, and in the evening and sleeping better and deeper than people who are constantly inside. So if you have really early work hours, when you drive to work, open up your moonroof if you can. Get outside just for a couple of minutes, couple times a day, and expose yourself to natural lighting. It's amazing how much that helps set up your body, and that is an environmental factor. And then how would you rate your exposure to toxins such as cigarette smoke, pollution, chemicals? Again, it depends on what you're looking at and how much you can control here. But if you live in a house that has mold, well, let's get that taken care of. Or maybe you get an air purifier, or maybe you get your home assessed in general, or you're looking at your sheets. If you live with someone who smokes, maybe you have the discussion to smoke outside. Like sometimes there are small things you can do with this. So it's good just to kind of be aware of your points. So we went through that, I know. So you would calculate your points and see where you are. No matter where you are in low risk to moderate to high risk, there's always something that you can do. Always, even if you are at a very low risk, you do all the right things, there's still something you can do to improve your inflammation, in my opinion. So see where you are. And then I always tell people, take this evaluation again in 6 to 9 to 12 months, sometime within the year, and see if you've improved your score. Or maybe another category has erupted. You never felt stressed or anything before, but something happened. There was something in your life that happened, and now all of a sudden your stress scores have gone up. Now we hone in on that. So this evaluation helps you to figure out where to focus your time. If you are at high risk, don't choose it all. See where your highest points circled were and focus there. Even if movement and nutrition were both high scores, where was the highest score? And pick that and start small. So here's some ideas for strategy, excuse me. If nutrition category was where you wanted to focus in, you could focus on your fiber intake. That's always my number one recommendation. If you want to improve your nutrition, focus on getting more fiber. And if that means you have to start with a fiber supplement, start there. I still want you eating real food fiber, but fiber supplements will get you there, especially if you're a picky eater or you have a lot of sensitivities and allergens. And it's like, oh, it's really tough to get the fiber, then start at least with a supplement. Then you can focus on your protein intake. Are you getting enough? Especially if you're working out, you want to make sure you're building your muscle. What types of fat are you eating? Is it all saturated, or are we getting good omega-3s in there? How's your antioxidant intake, aka fruits and vegetables? What's your sugar load like? Are you eating tons of fiber, but also eating a ton of added sugar? Can we change that ratio? How's your hydration status? And then lastly, would be looking at supplements, because if we're not looking at all those above it, what's the point in a supplement? If you choose to work on the movement category, focus on basic functional movement first. Can you do a squat? Can you get groceries out of your car and into your house easily without huffing and puffing? Can you do what you want to do in life? Are you able to get in and out of your pool, pick up your grandkids, take your dog on a walk? Can you do those things? And if not, let's work on those first. Then we get into resistance training. That's where we really want to start building your muscle. I really encourage you to work with a trainer if you are very new, so that you don't injure yourself in resistance training. Everyone at every age can start working on muscle, but it is important to do it safely. High intensity cardio would be the next thing. Actually get that heart rate spiked up 1 or 2 days a week instead of just walking. Walk really, really fast a couple of those blocks. Or if you're in the pool, grab onto the edge and kick, sprint as fast as you can one of the days in the week. There's so many ways that you can do high intensity cardio just for the 30-second blips, get that heart rate up, and that significantly helps bring down inflammation later. Mobility and flexibility are things you can work on too, especially if functional movement isn't great. If we're not able to bend down and pick something up off the floor, we need to work on mobility and flexibility. And then just activities of daily living. Can you sit down on the toilet and get up without needing handles? that would be an activity of daily living that we could work on with a personal trainer. So these are all parts of the inflammatory process, because if you can't get off the toilet without aid, there's something going on within the body that that is probably inflamed. Sleep. How much are you getting and how good is it? Are you tracking it? If you are someone who doesn't use a tracker, maybe you should. I don't recommend it for everyone, but especially if you are feeling like this is a category that you struggle in, you're not sleeping very well at all. Let's see why that's happening and how we can improve that. Your sleep environment, that can change a lot. How cool is your room? Is it super hot in there? That might be impacting how well you sleep. Are you sleeping on a comfortable bed for your own back? Do you have good sheets and pillows? And is it really dark in there? Do you sleep with the TV on? Turn that off. Sleep hygiene. What's your process before bed like? Do you have lights on and TV and your phone, and then you just turn it all off and decide to hit the sack? Maybe we could have a cool down period of 30 to 60 minutes before we go to bed. Let the body adjust. If stress and mental health was the section you're kind of looking at, breath work is something you can work on. Again, this 4-count breaths are really impactful for me, and they're easy to do anywhere. Yoga therapy can be really amazing. If you've never worked with a yoga therapist, it's like breath and movement all together. Mindfulness techniques, again, just paying attention to what's in front of you and turning off distractions. A gratitude practice can be very, very beneficial. Massage therapy, acupuncture, or just professional therapy with a therapist, with a psychologist. All of these are different strategies that you can pick. You don't need to pick the whole list. And then environmental factors, if this was your highest score, you might want to look at the air quality where you live or where you work. What are you putting on your skin? What kind of lotion and shampoo and makeup, especially ladies, we put on a lot of stuff on our faces. What kind of chemicals are in there? Maybe we need to change up what you buy next time around. Environmental, household environment. Again, the air, but also what are you using as a cleaning product? Things that have scents to them that kind of linger, those are actually usually a little bit toxic. What's your work environment look like? Food ingredients and where are they sourced? This is an environmental factor that's also nutrition, and your supplement and medication ingredients. Where are those coming from? So these are all things that you can look into and dig deeper depending on what your score was. Most people, once they've done some basics, could use some help to get more personalized, a little deeper into specifically what's going on with their inflammatory status and how to improve it. So you could work with a dietitian if nutrition is your focus. You could work with a functional medicine provider if maybe you're looking at supplements and medication and wanting to look at kind of whole body health. You could hone in on areas really specific to you. So we have master classes and workshops on really specific things like strengthening. We have a strength and motion master class that starts at the end of this month, specifically on how to build muscle safely for an older, less mobile population. We have myofascial workshops almost every month to learn how to do like self-massage. If you've never done myofascial, it's really cool. You use tools like small balls and different types of wraps that you can give yourself these really light touch self-massages that immediately calm you down. If maybe it's kind of your lower body that's tricky with mobility, maybe you need our yoga for psoas class. And it's not just here. Lots of places have lots of classes, but figure out what's important to you and learn and try new things. Join a cooking class. We have them online every other month for free. We have sound baths here twice a month that are phenomenal if you want to try a totally different technique with stress reduction. Experiment. It's also really good for your cognitive health. We didn't even talk about brain health today because that's such a deep, dense other subject. But all of these things help with your cognition as well. When you're trying something new, you're building new synapses, it helps the brain keep going. So I am going to wrap up here before I answer questions and just briefly talk about the masterclass that we have coming up. It will be on Thursdays starting next week from 1:15 to 2:19, from 12 to 1. So here's what that includes. It is 5 weekly classes. I know it's a 6-week series. I'm going to get to that. It's 5 curriculum-based classes. So we meet online on Zoom. They're all recorded if you can't make it. But they're not released to the public like I'll release this one. I only release it to people who pay for it. There is an intro of, we go a bit deeper than we did today on some things on inflammatory processes. And within class number 2 is all about food and things we can do and sources of inflammation in the food environment. Class number 3 is all about exercise and really types of exercise and how to do them for inflammation. Class 4 is on stress resilience, again, a deeper dive. Then we kind of come up with our plan together, our anti-inflammatory plan, all based on the evaluation. Class number 6 is a Q&A, because last time I only offer this once a year. And last year when I offered it, I did sort of a bonus extra class at the end for people who were interested, and they loved it. And they were like, it was so nice to have just a free-for-all question session. So that's what the 6th class is. You get an evaluation, you get a recipe booklet, you get a toolkit of resources, and I also have partnered with Farm Fresh to You, and they're offering subscription produce boxes at a really low rate if you want to. That's a separate opt-in. So that's $75 for this series. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat or you can email me separately. But essentially that's like $12.50 a class. It's just that I put it all together into a program. And not to toot my own horn, but last year I had a lot of people say it was some of the best money they spent this year. So it's a fun one. We go pretty deep into it and you have full access to me the whole time. So I hope you join. That's the QR code. I'll also send you the link. And then this is the QR code for that produce box option. It is only if you join the program, but it's pretty great. You get fruits and vegetables delivered to your door for 5 weeks for $25 a box, and they're all organic and fresh. And it's a good way to start if nutrition is the category of concern for you. So with that, let me pull up questions. I'm actually, as I pull up questions, I'm also going to go back to the other slides in case you wanted that program QR code. No questions other than Anne says Happy New Year. You're welcome. Thanks, Gianna, for joining. You're welcome. Just a lot of thank yous. Food box says it's out of stock. Oh, no. Okay. Shoot. That's my bad. I set it up incorrectly. So if you're interested in the food box, just email me. I will set that up for you. So sorry. Thoughts on vibration plates? Love them. We talked about them in the movement class, and we have one here at the Wellness Center. I'm a big fan of the vibration plates. They're not a magic bullet. I think they're sold as something that you can just do, and that's all you need to do. That's not true because it doesn't activate everything. But here's what's cool about vibration plates. One is they shake you so much. If you have one or you're near one or you're in the Wellness Center, come find me. Put a water bottle on the vibration plate, a clear one, and turn it on, and you'll see what the fluids are doing in your body. Like, it's so high intensity. So it's really good for your lymph movement. I really, really recommend people who are at risk of lymphedema, who have immune stuff going on, to definitely do one a couple times a week, every day you only need to do it for like 5 minutes. And it really gets things moving, which is especially important if you have any mobility barriers. So if you're someone who sits in a wheelchair or you're just simply not able to walk a whole heck of a lot, getting on that will help make sure that lymph gets moved and shaked around, which is good for your inflammation. The other cool thing is it does activate your bone and your muscles enough to where it can stimulate regrowth. So it's great for people with osteopenia, osteoporosis, joint issues, who are just kind of wanting to give their muscles that extra boost in addition to resistance training. It doesn't replace resistance training, but it can be an extra, especially if you do it before or after resistance training. And like I said, phenomenal for those with mobility issues. I would say, I would maybe even venture to say mandatory for people with mobility issues. If you don't have mobility issues, you're still going to get all those awesome benefits plus whatever exercise you're doing. So yay, Bianca, I love that you have that. Again, people at the Wellness Center, please come find me. I'll give you a demo. It's really cool and you don't need to do it for very long. You mentioned Steve, good resource. What is his last name? Oh, Stephen Covey. Sorry, I was like, Steve, who's Steve? Stephen Covey. He's fantastic, very well known in kind of the mental health world. Talks a lot about kind of organizing your life around what you can control, what you can't control, how you can do that with kids and families and workspace. Just a really, really cool way of looking at how to decide on priorities in life. And he has a book or two and a website. COVEY. What is the vibration thing you're talking about? It's called a vibration plate, and there's lots of different brands out there. But essentially, it looks like a big flat box, and you can sit on it, stand on it, put your arms on it. I mean, if you really want to get crazy with exercise, you can do like a push up on it while it's vibrating. But you can sit on the ground and put your legs up on it, and it vibrates. It literally shakes and vibrates at different levels depending on your ability to handle it, basically. Because if you stand on it at some point, you can kind of get a little dizzy. It shakes so intensely. And so it vibrates your whole body, and that's a vibration plate. So there are different brands that shake at different frequencies that have better research versus others. The one that we have here that is very well researched, has a lot of good like third parties that come in and do trials on them, is the Power Plate. But there are more. Oh, thank you, Bianca. She actually posted a link to other consumer picks, because there's lots of brands out there. Some are more affordable, some aren't. Some have handles on them. Oh, thank you, Liz. You linked to Stephen Covey. Fantastic. See, you guys, that's why I like teaching these classes. You already know so much of it. All right, any other questions? Okay, fantastic. Well, once I get this recording all synced up, I will send it to anyone who was registered. If you were not registered or you don't receive an email from me, they're always posted on the website under recordings for our Mount SAC friends who are here. You also have them on your Mount SAC Wellness website. I will also, with the recording, send the inflammation evaluation. And please come join the masterclass series. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of information. And it's you're basically just paying for the time put into creating it. And I only offer it once a year because it's so intense of my time. So I'd love to have you join me. If you have trouble with the QR code or the links, just email me. I can help you with that. And again, only the people registered get the recording. So if the time doesn't work, you'll still get the recording. But thank you so much for joining our first kickoff webinar of the year. There's always free stuff. Next month, I'm teaching a webinar and a cooking class. Those are all on the programs and events tab at stjuwellnesscenter.org. Yes, Bianca, I will add you. All right. Have a great rest of your week, and good luck planning your anti-inflammatory plan. Talk to you all later. Bye. Happy New Year.